Flip, 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 Flip Weekly.
Hello and welcome to the Flip Weekly podcast. My name is Matt. I am your host. It is Thursday, the 9th of April, 2026, and this is a podcast all about reselling. We go to thrift stores, we go to garage sales, we find things on Facebook Marketplace that we can resell for a profit. Now look, I'll be completely honest with you. The Easter break has taken it out of me. We have not been to any thrift stores. We haven't been to op shops. We haven't really done any marketplace deals. I've been spending good quality time with my partner. I hope you have been too. You do need to take a break every now and again from thrifting, from trying to make money. You just need to take a break. But this is going to be a podcast not about thrifting content, but it is about selling. As not other people's donated items, I am going to take you back to when I was 23 years old, going back so fucking far. It feels like a different lifetime ago. This is when I created a physical product. Now, this is a product that resulted in death threats. I got so much online hate from this product. I had the people responsible for creating Where's Waldo, Where's Wally, whatever you want to call him, threatening to sue me. Now, this wasn't an email that came through to me. This isn't a phone call. They sent me through a fucking letter, and that means that they are serious. Now, this also resulted in so much media coverage for this project. It resulted in a huge check that was deposited into my bank account. I'm going to tell you all about it. This is the most controversial thing I have ever sold. So let's get into it. And just to let you know, if you're not interested in this sort of thing, if you want to wait for more thrifting content, wait until next week, the week after, whatever. This is just a story that I want to tell you. I've never told it on a podcast before. So let me get into it. We're going back to when I was in my early 20s, a lifetime ago. I was in creator mode. Creator mode is when I'm wanting to create projects. You know, I'm wanting to create websites. I'm wanting to create physical products. I'm wanting to just let the creative juices flow. And this is just fresh off the back of making a website that made ridiculous money. I've talked about that on this podcast before, where I made something insane, over $100,000 in a single weekend with a viral website. And I had just done that. I wanted to move on to something a bit more tangible. When you're an entrepreneur and you're creating digital products or you're selling online, sometimes the itch comes to putting that product in a store or creating something physical because it just feels more real, right? So I had just been creating websites, and now was a time to create a physical product. You'll remember when I was 16, I was importing consumer electronics from China. I was just slapping my logo on things. I wasn't really creating something from scratch. So now was the time when I had a bit of a bankroll behind me that I wanted to create something physical. For my entire life of creating products, everything seemed to be in a rush. I just wanted to put things out quickly. I didn't want to delay anything. I wanted to just put it live, see what happens. That's the best thing that's what's worked for me in the past. But for this specific project, I was like, no, you're not going to do that, Matt. You're going to take your time. You're not going to rush. Let's create a good quality product. And the thing is, if you're going to create something that's good quality, high quality, whatever, it requires time, and it requires a lot of time, and in some cases, a lot of money. So this was March 2015. I was 23 years old. I had so many ideas for physical products, but there was only one that I was obsessed with. Now, when I was growing up, I was not a reader, but what I did like in terms of books was Where's Wally, or as the Yanks call him, Where's Waldo. I always found like the illustrations to be, creative. They're low-key funny too. You had characters pulling different faces. They were having pranks. There was like all these little hidden Easter eggs all around it. If you went to a library as a kid, everyone was checking out Where's Wally. So I had my mind on creating something similar, but in my own early 20s sort of attention-seeking, edgy troll way, right? That's how I was when I was in my early 20s, as embarrassing as it is to say right now. And I knew, from a very early age that nothing is really out of the realm of possibilities. If you want to do something, the only thing stopping you is you. There might be certain things that are tricky, but there's always a way. So if I had the thought of I want to create my own version of Where's Wally, but with my own twist, I'm like, all right, step one, what do we do? I don't need to contact a publishing company to create this book. I could do everything myself. After all you really need to create a book like this is an illustrator, a graphic designer, and a printing company. Like, that's really all you need. So in my mind, I'm like, that's easy. I'm going to do this. The hardest thing is going to be coming up with an idea for the book. And, I was spitballing around ideas with everyone that would listen. And we just kept thinking, what's the hardest thing to find? What's hard to find? What are people looking for? What can we have a bit of fun with? What's relevant? What's going to get people's attention? And then the perfect idea popped up. What about the missing Malaysian airplane? The missing Malaysian airplane. It was the perfect idea at the time. Malaysian Airlines, flight MH370. It had disappeared off the face of the earth about 12 months earlier. And every single time you'd look at the news, headlines, daily, conspiracies, they're everywhere about this fucking plane. You could not go a day without hearing about MH370. So 23-year-old Matt, young Matt, edgy Matt, trolley Matt, I thought this was fucking genius. No one could find this plane, and with all the speculation surrounding where it could be, it means that we could hide parts of this plane in all these different scenes, all these different locations on every single page. And not only that, we could have, so much fun incorporating cameos by celebrities, sports people, politicians, just get really fucking absurd with it. So instead of rushing like every other project, I wanted to plan this out. So I got together with some friends and we brainstormed all of these potential scene locations, and we're looking at the conspiracies. The conspiracies at the time were fucking wild. There was some people saying it's in Russia. There was other people saying the North Koreans captured it. I don't understand where these came from, but you know what conspiracy people are like. So we're like, all right, let's lean into this. But let's go even further into the absurd. Let's put this plane in places like fucking hell. Because after all, if we have a hell scene, we can then decide who gets to make a cameo in hell. This part of the project was so fucking fun. The list of celebrities, politicians, CEOs, all making appearances, I thought was fucking hilarious. Some of the Easter egg suggestions were so ridiculous that my friend was like, you should put yourself in hell, So I did. I am in hell in this scene. So along with all of those people, I needed to decide what the readers were going to actually be searching for. With Where's Wally? You're obviously searching for Wally. You're searching for the wizard. You're searching for, what's that guy's name? Oswald? The one in the black and the yellow, I think it is. So I'm thinking with this, I don't want the plane fully intact. We're going to put debris as the items that users need to search for. We're going to have the landing gear, luggage, oxygen masks. We're going to put the black box recorder, the captain's hat. All of these items are going to be strewn throughout all of the different scenes, and this is what readers are going to have to find. So I'm planning this out. It's taken several weeks. There were rewrites, there was cameos that were removed for so many different reasons, and then they were re-added for other reasons. There were scene changes, and I knew that I needed to finalize this before we moved on to the next stage, because there's nothing worse than hiring somebody to work on your project when it's not really formed. You're wasting everyone's time, including your own, right? So eventually it gets done and we land on 12 scenes in total. So we're going to do the airport, Area 51, Australia, hell, North Pole, the ocean, the moon, the jungle. We're going to do North Korea, Pakistan, Russia, and a tropical island. And as absurd as these suggestions are, besides hell and the moon, pretty much every single one of these locations was at one point suggested as the location of MH370, which is fucking crazy, right? So after we finalized all of that, the next step was to find an illustrator. And it sounds easy, right? Pay a freelancer, pay a company, they illustrate it, they hand it over to you, and you're all set. Go get the book printed. No, not quite. Because not only do you need to find somebody who's within your budget, but you also need to find somebody that is available for several months. This is going to take a long time. Illustrating all of these different scenes with the backgrounds, with all the extras, with the cameos, it's going to take a long time. So you add to that the fact this is like a search and find activity book about a missing plane carrying 239 people. It's not exactly something that an illustrator wants to put their name on, right? You know, it's controversial. It's not very nice. So illustrators are not going to want to work on this. You know, imagine putting it in your portfolio. It's really, really bad. And imagine there's somebody wanting to hire them and they're Malaysian and they see that, it's disrespectful, right? So I talked to a lot of people. I talked to a lot of illustrators, some of them extremely talented. Some of them had even worked on these sort of books before. But the thing is, they wouldn't include certain elements, and a lot of them took a moral stance. You know, and the thing is, for a project like this, censoring is a huge turnoff. You know, like I wanted to go hard. I mean, 23-year-old Matt wanted to go fucking hard. I wanted to ruffle feathers. I wanted to cause a stir. You know, this is how the book's going to sell. So it's now the middle of April, and it took a while, but I found somebody. They were okay with the subject. And I say okay with the subject. They're not approving of it. And they don't want credit. They don't want their name mentioned anywhere on this book. So 5 days after meeting this person, all the questions were answered. This guy had provided a couple of samples to me. A contract was drawn up and I paid the bloke. And then for the rest of April and the rest of June, this illustrator was working extremely long hours. He was working every single day to illustrate my vision. You know, he would sketch up backgrounds for approval. He would add in all of the cameos. He would work on the filler. He would get my tick of approval. And then he would go on to the next step, which is coloring all that in. And if you've ever done a fucking coloring in book, it's much more detailed than that. This isn't just doing green all over the place for grass. This is doing individual strands of grass. Like, I cannot express to you how fucking long this process took. I mean, this entire project took like 8 months to fucking do. So I'm seeing everything come to life. And yeah, it was really, really exciting to see some of these locations come to life. Like we had the moon, we had the location, the moon, and the cameos are just standing out. You know, we had Gina Reinhardt, the Australian mining billionaire. We had her on the moon as Jabba the Hutt. Like, we had Steve Jobs put in hell. We had Putin riding a horse shirtless in Russia. In the North Pole, we had Grandma hunting reindeer. We had some, you know, Australian 90s cultural references like Budgie the helicopter at the airport. We put xenomorphs from Aliens at our Area 51. You know, just even more obscure. On the island, we put a tuna eating a lion, which is, of course, a homage to the other guys. And there's just, I mean, they go on. We had so much fun creating these cameos. Nigel Thornberry's in the jungle. We had Dennis Rodman in North Korea. It's just, man, it's so much fucking fun. But here's the thing. At the same time, this plane, MH370, it's in the news every single day. And I'm starting to stress out a bit. You know, because if this plane is found, the project, in my mind, is essentially dead. And all of that money that I've invested so far, which is a lot, would be lost. And this is playing on my mind. I start to slip into old habits. I want this project launched as soon as possible. And you know what happened? A few corners were cut. And those corners that were cut, they were specifically the background extras of scenes. You know, these are people with unique facial expressions. They have features and they need to be sketched. They need to be colored in. That takes a lot of time. And I opt to scale down the number of people in the background just so that we can get this live as soon as possible. I didn't know that this plane was never going to be fucking found. I thought any day now it's going to wash up on shore. So then July comes. July rolls around, all of the illustrations are complete, and I've been talking to a book publishing company in Australia, and by July 22nd, I have the first proof copies in my hands. Now, this was a very small paperback, and then I opted to get a good quality hardcover. I wanted to compare them, right? Because the book only had those 12 scenes, and those 12 scenes were spread across 2 pages. So the paperback ended up being very, very thin. It felt like a brochure. And I thought, nobody's going to spend money on this fucking thing. So I needed to get the hardcover, and I created a few extra inner pages. You know, I had the title page with all of the copyright information, even though I had no idea what I was doing. I just had random inserts of pages with little illustrations just to bulk up this book. So I placed an order of 50 books, That cost me $941.95. Now, I bought these first 50 books because I wanted to send them out to journalists and bloggers that I have spoken to in the past. I wanted them to write about it. I wanted them to talk about it. I think if I sent 50 out, I might be able to get some press to help launch this thing. So that almost $1,000 investment was a gamble. But the thing that we needed to do next, we needed to create the website. People needed to buy the fucking book. I'm not sending this to Amazon. This is before the days of doing shit like that. I wasn't putting this on eBay. I wanted my own direct-to-consumer website. And this was like another fun creative task. You know, when you first landed on the website that we built, we had MH370 fly across the face of the website, and it did it once and never again. You know, we had Easter eggs put in the code. We had jokes on the front end. We had small previews of all the scenes. Like, you can still see the website via archive.org. That's the website that, you know, archives the entirety of the internet. I have a link to that in the Flip Weekly newsletter if you want to check it out, flipweekly.com. It was so much fun to make. But besides that, we're making a lot of progress and we're getting ready for launch. You know, but the thing is, we still need the inventory. I can't buy the books in 50 lot increments. You know, the cost per item is way too high. So if I need to sell this book at an affordable price, I need that unit price to go down. Like, I need it to be like $5 or below. And the thing is, to do that, we need to take a risk. And that's exactly what I did, because you cannot make fucking money without taking a risk. So I needed to buy enough books to get the unit price affordable. So what I did is I purchased 2,000 books. Yes, 2,000 fucking books. I spent just over $10,000 on it, and it gave me a cost per book of $5.07. Now, the reason I took this risk, one, I believed in the idea, and two, if every single book sold, that's a revenue of close to about $30,000, and then my profit before taxes would be about $20,000. And, you know, that's not too bad, considering if it's a huge success, I can always reorder and I can have that recurring income, or, you know, I can just sell the entire project. So I did that. I spent $10,000. And you know what happened just after I did that? A company had caught wind on what I was doing. Yes, I received a letter from a company called Walker Books Limited. And yes, not an email, not a phone call, a letter via registered mail. Now, those are not good to receive. Those are not good to receive. I open up the letter and it's not good, man. So this is what some of it says. Walker Books Limited is the... I still have the letter, by the way. Walker Books Limited is the publisher and the exclusive publishing rights holder on behalf of Martin Handford, the author and copyright owner of the internationally acclaimed Where's Wally books. I'm thinking, all right, why is the creator of Where's Wally trying to get in touch with me? We understand your above named book is imminently to be published, and it has come to our attention that the blurb on your pre-order webpage for this title, now picked up by most of the news media and no doubt internet selling sites, states that your above book is quote-unquote Where's Wally inspired. Uh-oh. They go on. This statement creates a clear and overt association between your book and the Where's Wally books by trading off the name, reputation, and goodwill of our books, and we are therefore writing to put you on notice that use of such a statement or any similar statement creating an association with our books constitutes an infringement of our rights. So I read that and I'm like, yeah, Waldo is not congratulating me on this book. This is a book to basically say, hey, you got to stop what you're doing, mate. You can't say this is a Where's Wally inspired book, even though I feel like I was inspired by Where's Wally. It goes on to say, furthermore, both Walker Books Limited and Martin Handford do not wish the Where's Wally name to be associated with a book making light of such a tragic occurrence. And I'm like, all right, yeah, that makes sense. So they give me 5 days to comply with their demands. I've attached the letter in the Flip Weekly newsletter. And at this point in my life, to be completely honest with you, I've received plenty of these kinds of letters, and they're still frightening. They're still frightening when you get this sort of shit. But the thing is, the demands, they seem straightforward. Remove Where's Wally from the website and we're good to go. The only issue, and and this company and Martin Handford, the creator of Where's Wally, do not know is that I put Where's Wally inspired on the actual book, on the book itself. This is days after I've paid the $10,000 for the 2,000 book run. I had on the book, Malaysian Airlines flight MH370 has been missing for over a year now with no sign of it being found. Until now. In this Where's Wally inspired activity book, Where's MH370 challenges you to find missing pieces of the airplane that disappeared on March 8, 2014. So, we have Where's Wally inspired on the fucking book. Did I run this past a lawyer before I did? Of course not. Of course not. Dumb fucking Matt. So I sent like a desperate email to this printing company. I'm telling them my predicament and I'm praying. I'm fucking praying. This non-religious kind of is praying that they haven't started the print run. Because if it has, I am completely screwed. I am completely screwed. If I can't sell the books, I'm out $10,000 fucking dollars. And you know, if I do sell them, I will 1000% get sued by that stripey fuck. I will 100% get sued. And that's going to cost me a hell of a lot more than $10,000. It's going to fucking bankrupt me, right? So this is karma catching up to me. And then I received an email back from the printing company. The run hadn't started. We are safe. I let out a sigh of relief. I have Where's Wally inspired removed from the book. We're good to go. This is a crisis averted. But man, what an idiotic mistake on my end. How fucking dumb can one person be? But me being me, I was not happy with Walker Books Limited and Where's Wally threatening me, right? So in response, we sent them some fan mail. we created an illustration. The illustration is a picture of Where's Wally boarding MH370 with the caption, "The real reason no one found Waldo." We sent it to their offices. Now, before that happened, I did consult legal. And you know what they said to me? And I quote, "It may be wise, considering the first possible infringement, not to provoke the rights holder and publisher. I would advise against posting the drawing online or distributing the drawing." So you know what I did? I fucking posted it online and I distributed the drawing. Again, nothing ended up happening from that. Sometimes, I guess you can get away with things provoking the rights holder. Anyway, enough about that. It's now October. It's time to launch this book. You'll remember that I sent out 50 of these books to journalists, to bloggers. Vice was the first one to write about it. And October 20, their article went live. And from there, the news articles, the blog posts, the talk on social media, it all snowballed. All of these media outlets were picking it up, including a lot from within Malaysia, which, you know, of course. And I also received several Facebook messages from family members of the people that were on board the flight. They wanted to talk to me. Now, they didn't want to talk to me through Facebook. They wanted to call me. Of course, I didn't do that. Nothing good can come from that, right? But anyway, the orders started to flood in. The death threats started to come. The hateful messages were coming. But in typical, 23-year-old Matt fashion, we lent into it. We put up a contact form on the website. And if the user selected the complaint option, we would auto-generate a subject line of "I'm a little bitch," which is so fucked up, man. So they would select complaint and it would just autofill, "I'm a little bitch." And the news articles, they weren't any better. There was journalists calling me shameless. There was hate coming from all directions. But the thing is, it also sold books. So can you really complain about that? We're getting what we wanted. And for the rest of the month and all of November, the project, the website, the orders, it was all pretty hectic. And as Christmas was just around the corner. That's probably why. And as December hit, I was encouraged to do a Reddit AMA. Now, that's basically like a Q&A on the social media website Reddit. And to my surprise, it went really well. Really fucking well. The post received thousands of upvotes. I think it's over 10,000 at this point. And this was so long ago when you couldn't reach, over like 10,000 upvotes, right? Now you can get even more, but back then there was a limit for some reason. And, ton of upvotes. We had over 2,500 comments. This was a really fun weekend for me. You can still read it on Reddit. There's the link on the Foot Weekly newsletter, but you must be warned. It was on a Saturday night and I was not sober for 99% of the AMA. Now, from that Reddit AMA, that one AMA on a Saturday night, we had 35,000 visitors to the website. We sold 626 books, and that brought me in $9,390 in revenue. So I essentially broken even at that point, and that's not bad for like a Saturday night. I don't remember it, by the way. I don't remember that Saturday night. But I woke up the next morning, headache, yeah, sure. Hangover, yeah, sure. But $9,390 in orders. And from there, the orders just continued rolling in over the next few weeks. But the thing is, I realized quite quickly that a marketing strategy that relies solely on media and press, it's not sustainable. And I didn't think that far. I should have known, my background, SEO, that type of shit. I should have known that I can't just rely on press. And I did pay to get a barcode for the book, and I did have the barcode put on the book with the hopes of having it put into a bookstore. But here's the thing, man. It's too offensive. It can't go into bookstores. Despite the fact that Where's Bin Laden goes into Dimmicks and fucking QBD or what? What's that fucking bookstore called? QBD? I don't know. This book, too offensive. I guess it was too soon. And don't get me wrong, I did try other things to get press. I wanted to generate more media attention to it. And in some cases it worked. There was one instance where I created an entirely fake newspaper with a cover that read MH370 was found and North Korea was to blame. If you actually read it, it's like a parody article. There's little jokes and all that sort of bullshit in there. I had the local news agents at my place put aside their unsold papers, and then I put my fake covers over the top. And after that, I sent them off to Martin Place in Sydney, and I paid a couple of people to hand them out to morning commuters. That resulted in a bit of online traction, some mentions on Reddit, on Twitter, maybe one or two news articles, but that's about it, right? So it wasn't doing too well. It was sort of floundering a bit. And if we fast forward about 12 months, those sales, they eventually dwindled down to like 1 or 2 a week. And I made my money back at this point. So again, in typical Matt fashion, I lost focus and I moved on to other things. And, it was at this point in time that I was able to reflect properly on the project. And I realized that it wasn't something that I was proud of. 239 people did die and thousands of other people were affected by the disappearance of this plane. And I jumped on this tragedy 12 months after it happened. Like, this is right when the families were grieving and probably still holding out slivers of hope. So I learned a lot from Where's MH370, the book. I no longer create projects that are intended to shock or offend people. All of the remaining books that I had, I threw them out. I didn't want to sell them. And from here, I wanted to, focus on helping people help solve their problems. I didn't want to create problems, right? That's one of the reasons why I started Flip Weekly. And to this day, I guess, MH370 still hasn't been found. It's regarded as the greatest mystery in aviation history. So that is the most controversial thing that I've ever sold. I want to thank you for listening this week. We will be back to thrifting content very, very soon. Make sure you follow Flip Weekly on social media. There hasn't been an update about the Goosebumps Whatnot auction with Retro Rescuers because Australia Post fucked up the delivery. It was sent to the wrong place. 100% their fault. I'm going to guess that the Whatnot auction will be between now, when this comes out, and a week. So maybe the 16th, maybe around there. Check the link in the description if you want to join Whatnot. You'll get a free referral credit. Thank you again for listening, and I'll see you again next week.
Flip, 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 flip weekly.